Alright, hello guys. Today our lesson is going to be about poetic devices. And we have 7 different names that we're going to learn today. We have simile, metaphor, personification, symbol, hyperbole, oxymoron, and illusion. So let's go through these one at a time. We're going to talk about their definitions, and we're going to provide some examples, okay? This list is a list of figurative language devices that are often used in poetry, something that you're studying for this lesson. So let's start with the first one, something you might have heard before, simile. So what is the definition of simile? Well, simile is when you compare two things directly using connecting words like or as. Like is one word you'll see in a simile, and the other one is as. That's how you know that it is a simile. Next we have metaphor. Metaphor is very similar to the first one, except we don't use these words. We make a direct comparison to two objects. Alright? So let's write a good definition. How about a direct comparison? Then we have personification. And if we look in the word personification, we see person. Alright, so what does it mean? Personification is when you attribute human qualities to something that is not human. Sometimes when you're watching cartoons, you'll see a cartoon dog and it speaks like a person, walks like a person does. That's called personification, giving human qualities to an object or an animal or something that is not human. That could be an object, an idea even, something that's not concrete. Alright, next, number 4 is symbol. Symbol. Well, a symbol is when an object represents something else. Okay? It's not just what it is, there's a meaning behind the object. Alright, next up, number 5 is called hyperbole. Hyperbole. Hyperbole is like exaggerating, making something seem more than it really is for effect. You could call it a deliberately exaggerated statement. Deliberately means on purpose. And number 6 is called oxymoron. Oxymoron. What does that mean? Have you heard that word before? Oxymoron is contradiction. Contradiction. This is used to create an effect. Opposites, ideas. And finally we have allusion. not illusion, allusion. Allusion is very similar to a metaphor or a simile. However, when you compare something using an allusion, you're comparing it to something famous or historical, something that many people already know about. Okay? Alright, so there's our list of definitions for each poetic device. What about examples, right? In order to really understand these, we need to see how they are applied. How are they used? So let's start with simile. We know now that a simile is when you compare two things directly using the words like or as. So let's create a sentence using a simile. How about the leaves were as red as blood? So we're making a comparison using the word as. And what are we comparing? We're comparing to the leaves' color. The leaves are very red, but to make our writing more interesting, we compare it to something else we know is red. Blood. We compare. And this makes your writing more interesting. Alright, we have metaphor. Well, metaphor is kind of like a simile, but it's a direct comparison. So, let's think of a direct comparison. Well, let's take out the word like or as, and we can create a direct comparison. Right? You could say, you broke my heart. Well, you can't really break someone's heart like you can your bicycle. This is a metaphor, right? We're comparing the heart to something that can be broken. But we don't need to use as or like. It's a direct comparison. Alright, next up, personification. Personification is when you take human qualities and you apply them to something that is not human. An object, an animal, even an idea. So, how about the sun? The sun is a common object, everybody sees it. The sun smiled down on us. So now we are comparing the sun to a happy person. We know the sun doesn't have a mouth, but it makes our writing more interesting when we can use personification to give qualities to objects like the sun. Alright, next up, a symbol. Symbol is an object that represents something else, a different idea. It's not just what it is, it's what it means. So what's an example of a symbol? Well, have you ever seen this symbol before? This is the peace sign. When we see this symbol, it means peace, right? It just looks like a circle with 3 lines, but it's recognized as a meaning of peace. Well, what's another symbolism? How about here in Canada, we have the maple leaf. Here's my drawing of a maple leaf. For us, when we see a maple leaf, which is common on many trees, it makes us think of our country, Canada. Next, hyperbole. Hyperbole. This is exaggerating, right? So when you really want somebody to understand a feeling, you try to make it more than it is sometimes. That's called hyperbole, exaggerating. So what's an example of that? Let's see. We have, you are a million miles away. I miss you. Now, if I was telling someone I miss them because they've traveled far away from me, I could just say the first part. I could say, I miss you. But if I really want them to know, I exaggerate a little bit. And I say, you're a million miles away. A million miles is a long way away. So I exaggerate for effect. Alright, next. We have this word, oxymoron. Oxymoron, which means a contradiction or opposite ideas. A common oxymoron is a jumbo shrimp. Right? These are two opposites. A shrimp is a very small, tiny animal. But sometimes when we eat them, we think, oh, these shrimp are jumbo shrimp. So these are two opposites. Something very big to describe something very small. So when you take opposites, you create a good effect because it makes people imagine it in their heads. Or how about a clever fool? When we see these two words together, it makes us think, oh, this person is foolish sometimes, but sometimes they're clever. But on their own, they wouldn't usually go together. So there are a couple of examples for you. And finally, allusion is a reference to something famous or historical, right? When we look at simile or metaphor, we use simile and metaphor to create an allusion. The difference is that an allusion is always about something famous, or someone famous, or somewhere famous. It could be a person, a place, or a thing. Or something historical that everyone remembers or has knowledge of. Right? A good one would be, your story was better than Shakespeare. So here's the allusion. Shakespeare. Shakespeare is one of the most famous authors in the history of the world. So I'm making a comparison to someone's story saying, I loved it so much, it was even better than something that one of the greatest writers of all time could write. I'm making a reference to someone famous, like Shakespeare, in order to create effect. So you can see that all of these poetic devices make our writing more interesting. And as you go through this lesson, you'll see that when you're writing poetry or reading poetry, these are important things to identify and understand so that you can understand the meaning that the author of the poem is trying to give you. So don't forget to answer the response questions to this lecture, and good luck.